It's really very nice material in Chapter 6. Once we don't burden ourselves with the typical Sanskrit formation of Praticca Samutpada. What we're most familiar with is Panini, but there are three famous grammarians, and Jam-yang-shay-pa used all three to show what Chandrakirti must have been using. Jam-yang-shay-pa went into what Chandrakirti didn't show in his own writing, what Chandrakirti himself was using, which is laboriously complex and which I had to translate when I was translating his great exposition of tenets, and which was a very interesting burden for me to have to do. Anyway, there's no reason to have burdened you with it. Burdened you with it when we first went over it. So of course we won't do that again. So, and then I tend to feel that we should put off reading His Holiness's brief treatment of arising and dependence upon conceptuality to when we have read Jangya Rilwe Dorje's fine exposition of that topic. When we come to it quite a ways down the line in this book, he talks about the three meanings of dependent arising, and it'll be good to put His Holiness's exposition or comment about it in context at that time. I'm compelled, perhaps, to remark that the meaning cannot be so trivial that with a few minutes or an hour or a few hours or a couple days reflection, we could realize the meaning. Unless we were capable of, simultaneous enlightenment, which we're more familiar with the other translation, which is, what is it called? What? Sudden enlightenment. And of course we may be, because it would mean that we would overcome all afflictive obstructions and achieve the enlightenment at least of the lesser vehicle, which would mean no more ignorance, no more afflictive emotions, and so forth. Yeah, super. But of course, that it would be so trivial. Like Geshe Wangyal's explanation to us back in, I was there from 63 to 68, and this was probably within the first 6 months of, training to be a police person, and somebody putting on the badge, and now you're a police person. And, designating you, arising in dependence upon designation. Now you're a police person. And, this was a helpful simile, a helpful metaphor for gaining some ground on understanding what this means. But if you took this as all of what it means, we understood it that afternoon. Let us say in 1962 or 1963. And I could announce from then on that I was enlightened. I achieved Satori at minimum that morning, afternoon, in cringing pain as sitting on that thick rug on his bedroom floor, which I probably would have been willing to say, now I'm enlightened, as long as you'll let me stand up. Sort of like being in the custody of nasty police will get you to admit to anything. But he wasn't like that at all. He was, he could be nasty, but he wasn't seeking for us to make claims about our achievements. Although some who are studying there like to think of themselves as immediate bodhisattvas, which at least would mean that they had achieved the altruistic intention to become enlightened, which always made me want to think, give me a break. Yeah. Anyway, so it can't be so trivial. The meaning can't be so trivial, although it looks like that. And the meaning can't be that we always have to be thinking of the names of things that we are hearing, seeing. When you listen to a symphony, that's somehow you're imputing the names of all the notes that you're hearing the orchestra play. And then, of course, if it's not that, what is it? So anyway, let us launch into his text. Just to look into the title of his text, Explanation of Tenets. Tenets here actually refers to his root text, and this is the explanation of that root text. Tenets refers to the root text. Explanation is his commentary on that text. So, as I've said before, the title is the place where Tibetans, is this true in America, North America, whatever, also that we inflate the title to make outrageous claims about the title? Or is this left to the back flap, where your friends and your colleagues make all sorts of outrageous claims about your book? Is it true about the title too?
No, not as much.
Not so much.
You might catch your
Yeah, did you hear that? The
No.
title is to catch your, she says the title is to catch your eye and to catch your money.
Right, definitely. Because if you don't have a good title, people won't even pick it up and buy it. And you won't get rich. Son of the land, son of the land of Samantabhadra. So, he places this text not just as the land of Samantabhadra, but the sun illuminating the land. So, of Samantabhadra. I don't know anything about the land of Samantabhadra. I should, but I don't. But never mind being the land, it's the sun illuminating the land. So what does his text do? It illuminates all of our own and others' tenets. Now, it's got 12 chapters. I'm hesitating because I think the 13th chapter is about Tantra. But why I'm hesitating is because maybe the 12th chapter is about Tantra. I should know, but I don't. I think the 13th is about Tantra. At the place that, shall I say, Geshe Wangyal and I bought, that just means I drove him to the three places that we looked at in western New Jersey, are right pretty much on the border of Pennsylvania. And he chose one of the three. And I think I've told you the story that after he chose it, neither of us knew which one it was that he bought. He said, choose the middle one. He said, let the agent know that we chose the middle one. And I said, which one is the middle one? And neither of us remembered which of the three was the middle of the three that we saw. We only found out later which was the middle one. So obviously it was chosen by the rosary. Anyway, in other words, I was there and saw all three, but I didn't choose which one it was, nor did I have any money. I had $312, I think it was, when I went to the monastery, and I gave all of it to him, and he gave me back secretly half of it, so that I would have a little money, and told me not to tell anyone that he did that, because the others who did have some money would want half of their money back. I assumed that was the reason, but I had no money. This was the money I gained from selling all of my property that I had in Barrington. Property, books. So, if the son of the land of Samudrabhadra brilliantly, illuminates something, what does his book illuminate? All of our own and others' tenets. So, the 12 chapters in his book illuminates the Buddhist and non-Buddhist tenet systems. And in the process of doing so, illuminates the meaning of the profound emptiness. And it does this by way of illuminating the emptiness. This is at the beginning of chapter 6, right? The profound, what does profound mean? It means emptiness. And so by illuminating the meaning of emptiness in all of the four schools, and in various non-Buddhist systems, beginning with the nihilist school, and then with the non-Buddhist system, Sankhya, and on through the other major 6 schools, and on through the 4 Buddhist schools, we end up with the meaning of, the profound emptiness. And then the catchy title is Ocean of Scripture and Reasoning. And indeed, Jam-yang-shay-pa is famous for citing scripture and, well, put it this way, using a great deal of reasoning, but tying it to a great, I could even say maybe an even greater deal of scripture. Fulfilling all hopes of all beings, what are the hopes of all beings to attain definite goodness, high status within cyclic existence, and the definite goodness of liberation. Excuse me. I'm overwhelmed with emotion. Remembering the teacher who made it possible for me to explain the title. Geshe Wangyal introduced me to this book. He had it on his table in front of him at all times. But it was gone Langdon. They'll explain practically all of the text. All but, I don't know, some of the pages of the autonomy school. All of the root text. And almost all of the pages of the explanation twice. Which I recorded twice. Along with the word commentary on the root text by Ngam Belden, the famous Khalkha Mongolian scholar, and the almost all of the annotations by Ngam Belden, which is quite a combination. All of the hopes of all beings, the hopes being the achievement of high status within cyclic existence and the definite goodness. You notice my literal translations of liberation from cyclic existence and the definite goodness, the attainment of the definite goodness of the omniscience of Buddhahood. So the features of high status, which are so carefully laid out in Nagarjuna's precious garland of advice for the king. Both types of definite goodness. And which Chandrakirti cites so frequently in his supplement to Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle, called a supplement because it adds to, as Tsongkhapa explains so clearly, it fills in gaps in Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle. Gaps not in the sense of, well, I don't want to stray into what I can't recall in the intimate detail that's there in Tsongkhapa's illumination of the thought of Chandrakirti's of Chandrakirti's supplement. Oh. So the presentation of tenets is the root text, which the inflated title, Lion's Roar. Lion's Roar because when the lion roars, all the lesser animals are, you know, all the lesser animals shut up. Lion's roar that eradicates error. So clearing up a whole lot of errors. What Jam-yang-shay-pa's the errors that he's particularly thinking of are the errors of Daksang Sherab Rinchen, who takes Tsongkhapa to task for the supposed errors, Tsongkhapa's supposed errors. So the fifth Dalai Lama requested that his tutor who retrospectively was called the first Panchen Lama, but was not at that time called the first Panchen Lama, but who founded Drashilumbo and thus subsequently, long after his death, was called the first Panchen Lama. So requested, I'm hesitating a little bit on that, but he requested Jam-yang-shay-pa to write a text refuting Daksang because people had not responded, and I assume he requested his tutor to write such a text. So that's why I'm hesitating a bit. It could be that his tutor wrote the text on his own, but I assume that the fifth Dalai Lama requested it of him also. And Jam-yang-shay-pa wrote, at the fifth Dalai Lama's request, an even more extensive this text. Refutation of Daksang Lotsao, the translator Daksang Sherab Rinchen. Because even though people had not responded to Daksang, because he was such a renegade even within Sakya, that people didn't bother to respond to him. But the fifth Dalai Lama was concerned that people in the future might think that no one responded because no one could respond. So he wanted people to know that they could be responded to. And thus, Jam-yang-shay-pa wrote in response he included in his book on tenets many responses. And then in the section on the Middle Way School, wrote in detail a separate section of responses, though there are responses earlier. And then the a further juiced up title is Precious Lamp, and a lamp illuminates. But lamps illuminate immediately. You know, you light a lamp and you get illumination right away. Illuminating the genuine path to omniscience, which serves as the basis for this, so Hopkins says, which serves as the basis for this lengthy presentation. Whose lengthy presentation? Yes, presentation in Jam-yang-shay-pa's explanation of tenets. I think sometimes I've put the word tenets in the bigger title in quotes to indicate that the word tenets up there in the first line is in reference to the presentation of tenets, the root text. So, the root text says, and this is in poetry, but has been translated here in prose. Because phenomena that are not dependent arisings do not exist here. So the word for phenomena is chur, dharma. And this means that permanent phenomena, permanence, like uncompounded space, are also phenomena, are also dharmas, are also chur. And so when it came to my translating chur as phenomena, so the words in Sanskrit, in Sanskrit, there's chur and churni. Chur, in Sanskrit, I said Sanskrit, dharma and dharmata. So you merely add ta at the end and it becomes dharmata. Dharma and dharmata. So impermanent things are dharmas, and permanent things are phenomena in this translation scheme. And I talked with my my main teacher at Wisconsin was Geshe-saba. My white mentor at the University of Wisconsin was Richard Robinson, the Canadian professor. He was the chair of the department and the director of the Center for South Asian Studies, the be-all and end-all boss, the person who came to our monastery in Freewood Acres wanting to hire a young Tibetan. Now, I've told you the story and I won't go into detail, to help with the teaching of Tibetan at the university, and ended up hiring Geshe-saba, who was not, the young candidate. But I had suggested to Geshe Wangyal in private that he put forward Geshe-saba, and I said, because Richard Robinson is very smart, and he'll see that Geshe-saba could teach Tibetan philosophy, and Geshe-saba will end up as a full professor, and he'll become part of the faculty as opposed to hiring a young boy Tibetan. And that's exactly what Geshe Wangyal did, and Geshe-saba fulfilled my prophecy. Not that I was into making prophetic statements, it's just I sized up the situation and that's what happened. Anyway, I talked with Richard Robinson. I said, well, you have Dharma and Dharmata, and it may seem odd in the usage of the word phenomena and noumenon in white people's philosophy. I didn't say it that way, Western, which I don't like using that word, you see. So to use phenomena and noumenon, and he said, oh, go with it, once I explained the ins and outs. And so that's how this ended up this way, with phenomena going for both. You see, phenomena seems more on the surface, just appearing. So Robinson's question to me was, does emptiness appear to the mind? And my answer was yes. There's no question. Now the counter evidence to that in Tibetan is we refer to impermanent phenomena as appearances and emptiness. But then it's very clear in Gelugpa teachings that emptiness appears. And you have to deal with the fault of these two terms, appearances and emptiness, as if emptiness doesn't appear. But emptiness does appear. And you have to deal with that fault. And even in Jonang, as Sherp Gensen says, emptiness appears. He says, don't make the mistake that emptiness does not appear. Now in Nyingma, it's not appearing to my mind right now, but I'd have to look into Nipam to see if emptiness appears. I would say that emptiness does appear, but I don't want to claim it right now because I would have noticed if it didn't, given that I'm trying to do a system that cross-applies. I began by just doing a translation system that just applies to Gelug. I figured I had to start somewhere. And then I tried to include Nyingma, then I tried to include Jonang. And I did a lot of reading in Gagyu, sitting on the floor of the library, in the stacks in Wisconsin. Anyway, so just to explain the word phenomena. So because phenomena that are not dependent arisings do not exist here. Now, here in this system, in Nyingma, dependent arisings are only impermanent. And in Jonang, dependent arisings are only impermanent. Gelug says even emptinesses, even uncompounded space is a dependent arising. Uncompounded. Uncompounded means not compounded in dependence upon causes and conditions. Therefore, a wider meaning of dependent arising is needed. A wider meaning of dependent arising. It cannot be arising in dependence on causes and conditions. Producing causes and conditions that are producers. So a wider meaning has to be brought in. And dependent arising, so I'm just bringing up the problems that Tsongkhapa and Gelugpas are going to have to explain in a wider way. And you're already familiar with these. Arising is going to have to mean established. Established in dependence upon parts. And dependent arising is only established upon, now here's a really wild term, the first one, meeting. And as the grammarians say, if something that's a dependent arising has to meet its causes, if you said you met somebody and you met Abraham Lincoln, what are you, crazy? You met somebody who's dead? You mean you met the ghost? The ghost is still around? You have to meet somebody who's present. But the literal word is meeting. Che. Parata prata pre. Parata trada che. Can't spell anymore. Okay, che, in reliance, de, den, che de den sum, those three, che. So unfortunately, some people don't want to translate che literally, and then you can't understand the argument, the argument with the grammarians. Although the grammarians also say, if you're going to rely on, for instance, how can you rely on somebody, for instance, who isn't right there? How are you going to depend on somebody, for instance, even on a cause? If you're going to depend on a cause, the cause would have to exist at the same time as the effect, if the effect depends upon the cause. So the grammarians say, dependent arising is, well, to use Trump's favorite words, fake. They don't accept it. They don't accept the word, they don't accept the meaning. All phenomena, so grammarians are not just grammar people, they're philosophers. All phenomena are not self-instituting, are not able to set themselves up, remember from last time? And are not established from their own side. But now even we require, okay, meeting, it has to be translated literally, che, upon meeting their own causes. It's hard to come up with any colloquial use of meeting in English. And even when we come to the explanation, it says these monastics have met their attainments, have gotten their attainments. All phenomena, profound and vast, eradicating the two extremes. This is the monarch, you notice I didn't say king, of reasonings. Gyalpo. Gyalpo can be used, apparently, for king or queen, and thus is monarch, much like sun, pu, is used for pu or pumo. But if you're making a sex difference, then Gyalpo is sex, is that the word? Gender difference. Then it's king. And if you're making a gender difference, pu is male. But if you're not, then it goes for both. So, the Khalkha Mongolian, Khalkha is a big portion of Mongolians. Noam Belden's word commentary. It's the best word commentary. There's one that I taught at the University of Virginia, and then Craig Preston and Daniel Kozart published the translation that we worked up in the class with my blessing, his word commentary, as a separate book called Buddhist Philosophy. Belden's adheres more closely to Jam-yang-shay-pa's own commentary that's embedded within his explanation, his own explanation of his own root text. Phenomena that are not dependent arisings do not exist in this system. Because, and you see the because that goes into what it's proving. So you get the two bullets that are the two parts of the because clause, and then out at Noam Belden's own margin, not my margin, we get all external and internal phenomena are not self-instituting and are not established from their own. So, and then we get another because clause, which breaks the practice down into two parts. Practice of the profound, that is realization of emptiness. Practice of the vast, the altruistic intention to become enlightened, which is motivated by great love and great compassion, is fulfilled is it? I don't know about that. I put that Anyway. So then, after the Tibetan, unlike the proponents of truly existent things, phenomena that are not dependent arisings, so the proponents of truly existent things, so here in the system of the consequent school, phenomena that are not dependent arisings are not asserted. Well, that would be true in the autonomy school also. But the reference here is to the consequent school. Because whatever exists must both be established in reliance and lack inherent existence. Now, Nagarjuna says, because there are no phenomena that are not dependent arisings, there are no phenomena that are not empty of inherent existence. And Hopkins, for the most part here, tells you where the brackets are from. And none of them are from him, I can say, because I am he. But he doesn't always tell you, Hopkins Jr., who's pretty recent. What would you say for, maybe there's Hopkins 1, 2, and 3, and I'm 3? Hopkins the third? So, nicely, you get the sutra versions. By the way, Chandrakirti, at the end of our first chapter of Ongoing and Coming, has some, as I remember, some really neat quotes about conceptuality. As I remember, please take a look. He has quotes at the end of each chapter on the sources for no coming, no going. And I believe there are some quotes at the end of that first chapter from Sutra about the world is arisen only by way of conceptuality. Please have a look and tell me if they're there. Save me some time. Now the really sticky one, which is going to be dealt with later, we explain arising dependent on causes and conditions as the meaning of, you notice the carefully put in, I was looking for in note 181 for the source for the brackets. Oh, brackets are from Tsongkhapa's commentary. Okay, that's cool. I'm glad Hopkins II put that in. As the meaning of the emptiness of inherently existent production. That emptiness of inherently existent production is dependent imputation. Now, very interestingly, just this emptiness, you would think it was going to be dependent imputation, but that's not what's in illumination, is it? No. Tsongkhapa's commentary on Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle, emptiness from inherently existent production, is the middle path. Wow. So that's, here's where I say, this will come later. Shamla Yongari. Shamla Yongari. It's also 954. Due to lacking the two extremes of, you notice the brackets, inherent existence and non-existence, just this emptiness characterizes no inherently existent production is called the middle path. The middle trail. Trail means ume lamde, ume shul. Shul means the tracks that are left behind. You know, when cows go through an area, they go the same trail. A bunch of cows go through, they beat down the grass. And then when hunters go through, hunters and people walking, they follow the same trail. Because the cows don't shit that much on the trail. And then, believe it or not, the highway gets built. The roads get built on that same trail. I don't think, generally speaking, the highway gets built on that trail. But the roads do get built on that trail. I'm a little afraid of my place in Virginia when they build the highway down, because that trail it's at the foothills of the Blue Ridge. It's not good. They're going to make it straighter, and they're going to take eventually. Am I going to live that long? But I care. I care. Whoever's going to get Uma, when it's in my will that it's going to go to the Uma Institute. I'm certainly fixing it up that way. Unless I live so long, I'm going to have the money. Anyway, the trail is the trail. Tracks. The middle tracks. Shul. What's left behind? The tracks from. Because everybody walked these tracks. These are the tracks left behind. The trail. emptiness, dependent, imputation, and middle path are, and then you have to look carefully, are mingi cheta, are, maybe it's synonyms. It's called particulars of the name, which should be its name, particulars of the name. So it would be synonyms. And then that becomes a real problem. How this can be, and that's dealt with extensively in what we're going to read. So that's my way of, what is it called? Shuffling this off? Shuffling? What's the word? Shuffling this off. What?
Tabling it till later.
Yeah, leaving it till later. For those who have generated the view of the middle way in their continuum. Well, that gives a little something, but that's not much.
It's like, how are those synonyms?
Yes, synonyms is fine, but how could it be synonyms?
Yeah.
Like if it's the one, it's the other? Give me a break. Give me a break. That's totally unsuitable. You have to recognize that it is unsuitable. So then, for a particular person, but even for a particular person, how could that be?
Mm-hmm.
So then, we'll have a bunch of opinions that come later. So you see, this is the advertisement for. We notice the difficulties, and this is where we get the enthusiasm for what comes later. But you see, I know it comes later. So what's disappointing is when the person who's pretending to be the leader of the conversation doesn't know that it comes later, and those who are listening find that it doesn't come later.
Oh.
So let's stop there. See you then.